Hi, in this video we're going to look at how to write if statements in JavaScript. If statements are used for decision making in programs. They allow us to test a condition, and if the condition evaluates to true, then the program can run some code. Otherwise, if the condition evaluates to false, then it won't run that code and we could run some other code instead. So if statements are constructed by firstly specifying a condition we want the program to check. So an example of a condition could be checking if a password entered in by the user is the correct password, or we might check if a number is greater than another number, or if two things are equal or the same. All right, or if one thing is less than another, or one thing is greater than another. So we can test different conditions, and then that condition that's being tested will evaluate to either true or false. So for example, if a user enters in a password and we check if the password they've entered in is the password that exists in the system, and those two passwords are the same, then the condition would evaluate to true and we could run a block of code. Otherwise, if they weren't equal, then the condition would evaluate to false. Okay, so we can check different conditions and then have our programs make decisions based on the outcome or the result of that condition test. So we're going to look at how to write an if statement and how to use what are called comparison operators to compare two things in a condition. And then in the next couple of tutorials, we'll look at using some other operators as well to combine conditions and to test multiple things at once. All right, so for this example, what we're going to do is we're going to have a program which will check how much a customer has spent on like an online shopping website, as an example. And based on how much they've spent, a shipping rate will be applied. So, for example, if the customer has spent less than $50, then they'll be charged $10 for shipping. If the customer has spent more than $50 but less than $100, then they'll be charged only $5 for shipping. And if they've spent $100 or more, then they'll get free shipping. So we'll look at how to write if statements to check these conditions, and then display or run some other code that will display a message to the user. All right. So firstly, let's create a variable to store the amount of money that the customer spent, and we can just make up that amount. So we'll call that variable spend, and let's say, can't actually use a $sign there unless it was a string, but this is going to be a number that we're going to be comparing with other numbers, so we don't want to store it as a string. So rather than putting in the $sign, we'll just put in a number, and we'll just say to start off with that they've spent $160, and this is going to be stored as an integer, not as a string. All right, and with currency, we don't need to put in the $sign. Otherwise, that's not going to work. So just the number there, or it could be a float or decimal if we wanted to as well. But we'll just keep it as an integer for the moment. So the customer spent $160 in this example. So what we'll then do is construct an if statement to check, have they spent more than $100? If so, we'll say they get free shipping. Otherwise, we'll say that they get $10 shipping. And then what we'll do is add to that to also check if they've spent more than 50 but less than 100. So let's start off with the first condition. So to construct an if statement to check something, to test a condition, we just write if, and then in parentheses, that's where we specify the condition, and then between these curly brackets, that's where we specify the action or the code that we want to run if the condition evaluates to true. All right, so within these parentheses, we'll specify the condition, and the condition is going to be, we're going to check firstly if the user or the customer has spent more than $100 or $100 or more. So we could write it like this. We could say if spend is greater than 99, so just use the greater than symbol there, and that will check if the customer spent more than $99. All right, or we could say greater than or equal to 100. So this will check if they've spent more than $100 or more. So greater than or equal to 100. So these are called comparison operators. And I'll give you some examples of comparison operators. Okay, so we've got is equal to, which is two equal signs in a row. We've got is not equal to, which is an exclamation mark and an equal sign. We've got greater than, less than. We've also got greater than or equal to. And we've got less than or equal to. Okay, so these different comparison operators are used to make comparisons like this. We're checking here if the spend is greater than or equal to 100. So the is equal to can be used to check if two things are the same. So for example, if we wanted to check if the spend amount was exactly $100, we would say is equal to. All right, is not equal to is to check if two things are not the same, to check if they're different. And then we've got the other operators like greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, and less than or equal to. All of these operators here can be used for integers or floats, so we can check, two numbers are different or the same, or if one number is greater than another or less than another, or greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. But when it comes to strings, we can use is equal to, so we could also check if two strings are the same. And we could use not equals to check if two strings are different. But the greater than, less than, and these other operators are usually used for comparing things like numbers, comparing quantities. Okay, so here we're just checking if the spend is greater than or equal to 100. And then what we'll do is we'll just say console.log, you get free shipping. Okay, and we'll just leave the code at that, just like that for the moment. We'll go and open this page and we'll refresh, and we see that message. You see, you get free shipping. All right. If we would go back and change the spend amount, and we made it, let's say $60 instead, and go back and refresh the page, then we don't see anything. All right, there's nothing there. So if this condition here that was specified does not evaluate to true, then this code here will never run. We could have multiple lines of code in here, but that code within these curly brackets will never run if the condition is false, or evaluates to false. All right, and if we were to make this exactly $100, then we would see you get free shipping because it's checking if the spend is greater than or equal to 100. All right, but as we saw, we didn't see anything when the spend was less than 100. We didn't see anything at all. So what we could do is add an else. Okay, and you can only add an else when you've already specified an if. So an else will run some code if what's specified in the if statement doesn't evaluate to true. So if the spend isn't greater than or equal to $100, then the code in these curly brackets here will run instead. All right, so it's kind of like a default. If any of the conditions specified aren't true, then it'll run this other code here. So if something's true, do this, else do that. All right, so what we could say is, all right, if they haven't spent more than $100, we might say shipping is $10. All right, so if I refresh the page now, I see shipping is $10 because I spent $60. Okay, now we might want to have another shipping rate. So if they spent more than $50, or they spent $50 or more, but less than $100, then they might get a reduced or discounted shipping fee of just $5. All right, so we could add a whole heap of ifs. All right, we could say if spend is greater than or equal to 100, and then we could add a new block here. We could say if spend is greater than or equal to 50. All right, and then we could have another block and so on. But we're checking things here that are all linked together. We're checking the spend amount here. And so if one thing isn't true, then we'll want to go and check some other conditions. So if they haven't spent more than $100, then we might want to check, well, have they spent more than $50? But if we already find out that they've spent more than $100, or they've spent $100, then we don't need to go and check these other things here. So here, if this if block is true, then this else block here won't run at all. That code won't even run. Okay, so we can have ifs on their own. We can have ifs and elses together. We can't just have an else on its own though. It must have an if before it. But we can have an else if as well, in between ifs and elses. All right, we can have as many our else ifs as we like there. So what we can do is say, well, if this isn't true, if they haven't spent more than or equal to $100, then have they spent maybe more than $90, and have they spent more than $80, and so on. We can add a whole heap of else ifs, and that just looks like this. So we'd say else space and then if, and then in the brackets the condition that we want to check. So we could say, you know, greater than $49, or we could say greater than or equal to $50, and then curly brackets, and then we could say discounted shipping is $5. Oops, not 50, $5. Okay, so how this is going to work is it'll check to spend more than or equal to $100, they get free shipping. If that's not true, then it will go down and check if they spent more than $50, or if they spent $50. If that's true, it'll display this. But if that's not true, then it will go down and run this code in the else block as well. But as I mentioned, we can have a whole heap of else ifs if we wanted to. So if we had you know, another discounted rate, which was maybe if they've spent more than $20, shipping might be like $7.50 or something like that, then we could add that too. Okay, so let's test that out. We'll go and refresh this page, and we see discounted shipping is $5 because the customer spent $60. But maybe we could change that to 30. And now they say discounted shipping is $7.50. We could change this to 10. And they just get the $10 shipping rate. All right, if we make this 100, they get free shipping. All right, so these are just some examples of if statements where we can check conditions, and then using else ifs to specify other conditions if the ones before them aren't true. So if this isn't true, then we'll check this, and if this isn't true, then we'll check this, and if this isn't true, then we can also have an else, which is code that will run if no other condition has evaluated to true. All right. That's it for this video. In the next video, we'll be looking at how to nest if statements. We can actually put if statements within other if statements, and we'll also be looking at using other types of operators which can be used to combine conditions. So rather than just checking one thing at a time, we can actually check multiple things at once. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching.